Hey, what's up guys? How's it going? We're gonna go over how to draw a bicep. Basically just the arm, you know? Not really just the bicep, I'm sorry. An arm. So when I start out drawing an arm, one of the biggest things that I do for any arm, depending on the position, is I actually start with the tube form of it. You know what I mean? I know you've seen this in like 100 different drawing books. You know what I mean? You draw them like tubes. And honestly, here's the thing. When I first saw this in art books, I was like, what the fuck? Like, I was like, what is the point of drawing them like tubes? Why? Why? You know what I mean? I didn't give a crap about it. Never understood it at all. And the whole point of the tube kind of method, whatever, the tube thing would be to, because now I see a lot more value in it now, would be to find the volume of the form. You know what I mean? It's again to get you thinking in 3D. I gotta say that a lot. You know, I really love saying that. Thinking in 3D. You know, when you think of it in three-dimensional space, you really work out in your mind. You know what I mean? You work out in your mind much better of what exactly, you know, what space is going to take up, and you're kind of like, oh, okay, this would do that because you know you have arms, and you kind of like, okay, it would squish here and do that. You kind of think of it like, how would it move? You know, and I believe that's the reason that they make them tubes. Basically, you don't draw them as tubes most of the time. This is usually how I start an arm. I just draw it like so, that shape. And, you know, I picture this kind of, the rounded forms in my mind before that. And, it's like a plane going by or something. Freaking me out. Really freaking me out. And, it's like that movie out of Donnie Darko, you know, where that plane flies out of the sky and destroys them. Anyways, so this is what I start. And I have this in my head, really, when I'm doing, and I just draw this, those two lines. And just to get my positioning down. We'll leave the hand out of it. The hand will be another thing. So, biggest forms on the arm. You know, you don't have to know every single muscle, but it'd be a good idea to learn them. But here's a couple just to kind of start off with. There's the deltoid, which is a huge one. That's your shoulder. And the deltoid is basically a ball. You know what I mean? That's the way I see it. You know, you see like, especially in anime, like Dragon Ball. They got this huge friggin' like, looks like they got bowling balls on their shoulders, you know? Looks cool. And that's split into 3 large groups. You know what I mean? There's one on the front. You can feel it on yourself, too, really. Goes to the front, and that, you know, there's a clavicle in here that pokes in the middle. It's almost like a little shelf. You know what I mean? Like right up in the middle there. Let me see. Can you see that? Yeah. It's almost like a shelf in the middle. It's like a flat surface with a bone there. And then there's the front one. There's the medial one, medial deltoid, and then there's the one on the rear in the back. You know what I'm saying? So it kind of looks like, I used to think of it as kind of looking like a bell pepper or something. Then there's the famous one, right, which is the bicep, made up of 2 muscles right up here, right on the front. And that kind of goes about halfway to the arm, really. Middle has the brachialis, I think, right here, is that middle section, you know what I mean? The middle section between the, let me put it around, middle section between the bicep and the tricep, that's why I always think of it. I think there's another one in there, but middle section. And then you have the tricep in the back, which is made up of obviously 3 muscles. That's an obvious one. Tricep, bicep, there's 2 muscles. It's kind of split in half there. Sometimes you see that in comics. And then tricep is made up of 3. You can't really see it because it's behind there. I'll go over it maybe in another view. And then one really, really important muscle is the brachioradialis, which ties around. And you always see this over the front too. In someone's forearm, it's huge. You know what I'm saying? You know, I mean, it's huge on some people. But superheroes is gigantic, and it's kind of that gripper muscle, you know, on your forearm, and you know, you can see it really move around when you grab certain things with your wrist and you move it around. It's huge flexor or whatever, huge. And then you put the rest of the arm, which is, and you know, you have the elbow. That's called a landmark, meaning The landmark is when a bone kind of sticks out the outside, like you can see the bone on the outside. You can't see the middle of the bone underneath the bicep there, you know. But you can see the bone at the very edge here, right? The elbow. It's a bony protrusion. And then there's a lot of other muscles right here, but honestly, I don't really think about those too much. I usually think about this big one right here. A lot of those muscles turn, and you also got to remember another landmark would be the, I believe it's the ulna. The ulna bone kind of sticks out the side over here in the wrist before, you know, it hits the hand. We're not going to go over the hand right now. So, something to remember when you're drawing the arm, especially when you're drawing it in a flexed position. When you're drawing the arm in the flexed position, try not to make the whole thing like a balloon, you know, meaning every single muscle is active. Hopefully you can see that on the bottom. See how it's a circle and another circle, and then there's like a big old kind of Popeye looking arm. Sometimes that's okay, you know, some people can pull it off, but what, and this is a style thing, what I recommend is, okay, because when you strengthen your bicep, anybody who like lifts or does that kind of thing, when you strengthen a muscle on one side, the opposing muscle will completely relax. You know what I mean? And it works like that on your legs as well. So if I strengthen my bicep, let's say the front, let's say you're drawing an arm over here and it's going to be a little smaller. Yeah, it fits. Let's say you're drawing an arm down here in this position and the bicep is flexed. The tricep will be a little bit smaller, you know? I mean, smaller than it normally would be, because the bicep is not totally flexed. So you have this kind of turning motion. You have this turn, and then it'll be kind of flat, and then this one will be, you know what I mean? This one will be turned. It's not so much an opposing muscle over here, but so that it doesn't look like balloons. Try not to make the tricep too gigantic. You know what I mean? It's like that with everything else. Same thing for the tricep, and that's when you're bending, right? That's when you're bending your arm. That kind of strengthens, that activates the bicep. The same thing when you straighten the arm, right? When you is that appear on camera? Yeah. When you strengthen the arm, when you straighten the arm and pull back and use your tricep. Let's say the tricep's like huge. The bicep isn't going to be all that big because it's relaxed in comparison. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, I hope that makes sense. That's a little bit about the arm. I'm going to shade this arm the way it is right there. I'm going to time lapse it just so you have an idea of the volumes. And I'll talk about it a little bit after. Okay, here I go. Alright, what I did was I kind of, when I shade, I tried to go with the form. You know what I mean? That's another reason for the volumes that you think about. I'm trying to, every time I turn a line, I'm thinking about the roundness of that muscle. You know what I mean? Or the roundness of the form in general, because that's a broad form, and there are smaller forms. Something I wanted to get into, actually, was the forearm to the wrist. Now, a lot of times, especially when you're shading, you're going to notice there's a lot of round kind of features in the forearm. I mean, obviously the elbow's a little more straight. There's a roundness depending on the musculature of the arm, of the forearm. But the forearm has sort of a different shape. If you were to take in that pose, I'm thinking of the forearm as a kind of a cylindrical form that goes down to a squared form. And this is the way I think of the wrist almost every time. So if I have to simplify it down, I would think about it as, I mean, and, you know, again, we're going very kind of just general form. you know, if we were to simplify it down, I would have it kind of more round, and then it's slowly turning into a kind of a rectangle. And this is the way I've always thought of that. And then obviously the hand would be over here. But that's the way I've always thought of the forearm, if you were to look at this. It's just a way for your mind to process it, and for you to make it, the easier you make it to process in your mind, the easier it's going to be to put it down on paper. You know what I mean? Because what you're doing is you're taking the real world, things out of the real world, remixing them, and kind of interpreting them on the paper the way, you know, you interpret it. And that is something, like I said, that will help you. Thinking in simple shapes to begin with. Thinking of everything in simple shapes, you know? Whether it be a motorcycle, obviously motorcycle, some, you know, like whatever you're drawing, different animals, spaceships. Thinking in simple shapes is always the way to go. Anyways, I've been going long enough. If you have any more questions about the arm specifically, let me know, and I'll do another video about it, maybe a follow-up video. But that's generally how I take care of drawing an arm. And that's a pretty common position, I feel, that kind of bent position. All right, guys, thanks a lot. Please subscribe if you haven't, and press the like button. That really helps me out. I'll see you guys later. Thanks a lot.